Welcome to Athletes to Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct, and we've created this platform to help athletes and other alumni to network and connect amongst their alumni groups. And the show is all about teaching, inspiring athletes that there is life after sports. I interview former collegiate professional athletes and talk about their journey out and just to successful entrepreneurship and business leadership, just all across all sports and different athletes. And so excited today to have AJ Donaldson. How you doing, AJ?
Well, brother, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. AJ is actually in New Jersey. He's a fellow South Floridian with me, but he's made his way to the Northeast this week. So AJ played college football at the University of Miami, former Hurricane, and then once he got done, he dabbled into. There you go. He's from the U. Although I hear other people say that too. It depends on which U it's from. But down here in South Florida, we know the U is being Miami. So he got into, when he got done with playing there, he got into some real estate, mortgage broker, dabbled in some different things, ultimately creating a tutoring business. And then that led ultimately to being the founder and CEO of Epic. And he's going to tell us all about that as we go on. So AJ, I always like to ask, when you were growing up, talk about how sports shaped you leading up to college.
Oh, man. Wow. So great question. And Rob, thank you for this platform. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to people and really spread the good news of what Epic is doing in the world and what we can do together. Growing up traditionally in a low to moderate income home, and I say moderate just because my mom worked so diligently and hard to provide, but I didn't spend a lot of time in the sports. It was grades, it was music. My mom was a music educator, so education had been in our family for generations, and I was finding myself tutoring kids even in her music program. As I say that, there was also the absence of a father, right? Single family home, which I honor my mom and everything that she did to provide. At the same time, there's still that deficit. So I leaned on mentorship, and of course, in the community I grew up in, one of the greatest mentors you ever had was your football coach, right? And being a 6 foot, 225-pound boy, typically you kind of get pushed into that. And there was just a lot that I needed to pour into the sport because of the lack, right? The emotional intelligence, the social emotional intelligence wasn't there. And so a lot of times we as young men pour a lot of that, aggression, if you will, right? As we develop as young men, we're falling into our bodies, getting bigger, faster, and stronger. There's a place to put it all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Did you think about being a professional athlete? Was there a dream? And was it football or another sport growing up?
That's a great question. I mean, I played multiple sports, track, wrestling, things of that nature. A lot of it was more like conditioning, strength conditioning to get me prepared for football. But to be honest with you, I did not have the aspiration to become, the NFL star. The back of your mind, it's always there. You always hope, like, maybe if I get my chance. But ultimately, the goal was about earning a very substantial income, right? Single family home, wanting to set your mother, and predominantly single family homes with mothers, not take away from fathers who are single dads as well, but a lot of times it's wanting to set that parent free from the financial woes of their situation and circumstances. So that was the goal. Like at the end of the day, college football was to pay for college, right?
Right.
And a lot of people don't know this about me. That wasn't necessarily my claim to fame. I got a full academic scholarship at the University of Miami during a season that they actually had. They were on probation. They didn't have the athletic scholarships. You had a lot of guys come in on track scholarships and all these other scholarships. I happened to be one of the few out of 180 guys on the team that was actually on an academic scholarship to be at the University of Miami. So they essentially got a 3-4-star athlete free by way of all the hard work I put into the classroom. But no, I mean, if they were going to recruit me and have me play in the NFL, it was going to be an automatic yes because we knew what the dollar sign was.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm sure a lot of people feel that way. And then, then ultimately, as we all know, like just a small percentage are fortunate enough to get to, playing the professional sports. So one thing I talk about is, with the whole athlete transition out of sports, it's such a major problem today between mental health and financial literacy, a lot of other areas, just identifying yourself and, what career do you go into? So when you were at was there any type of courses? I don't mean just like a one-day workshop, but courses that helped athletes ultimately transition out of sports?
Another phenomenal question. Not showing my age, but back in those late 90s, early 2000s, the dynamics of having programmatic time and instruction in there when it comes to like financial literacy, social emotional intelligence, absolutely not. We had things like etiquette class. We had things like, strength and conditioning and things of that nature. And etiquette class came because we were going to have dinners in front of financial supporters of the organization, right? So we didn't want to embarrass ourselves. A lot of us didn't grow up learning how to have a specific type of etiquette at a dinner table. I personally did because I grew up in a Jamaican household, right? And so there was no not doing that, not learning that by way of my mother's, my aunts, my godmother. And so that was some of the things that we had in place, but definitely not the emotional intelligence or any of those things that we absolutely need today.
Now, are you still kind of in touch with the program? Do you know because I know more schools now are probably doing some things, maybe not a lot of things, but some things. I mean, do you know if Miami's doing stuff now more so with that?
Not as familiar with that specific line of programming. I mean, as an alumni at the University of Miami, we get the emails, a lot of times the emails from a booster standpoint, or just to have us involved by coming to the games, sitting up into the suites to come out and honoring us as alumni to come onto the field, things of that nature, but not to the extent of knowing all the ins and outs of the programs to help nurture these young men.
Yeah, and I think it's probably the case. I think some schools, it depends on what the school is. It's obviously it depends on the sports, but it's something that we're trying to do also as a company. Just looking at ways that we could bring a group of partners together across the different, again, the financial, mental health, and all that to potentially become an extension of an athletic program, or maybe even at a professional level, to where we could bring these resources, but not only for the current athletes, but I think also for the alumni athletes. A lot of times the alumni athletes tend to get forgotten. So whether it's forgotten because it's a new athletic director, new coaching staff, or whatever, but we want to bring that back together and kind of spotlight that on them. So you kind of touched on, it's a good segue to alumni engagement. So obviously, big for us at Alumni Direct. So you said that, they reach out a little bit, have the players come to games and all that. Have you seen any more programs where they might be, wanting you to mentor, but not just like the one-time thing, but working closer with the athletes?
I mean, there are certain athletes that they will lean on and, ask for support, not necessarily the entire or extending an opportunity for the entire alignment of alumni to come back and pay it forward. I have heard of multiple athletes, friends of mine, who have been asked to come in and maybe, be the chaplain or things of that nature, but nothing actually, from what I've seen, my experience, intentionally done to really have the alumni have a direct, name it on purpose, pun intended, a direct access to the players for multiple reasons. In fact, there's multiple reasons why they even make sure that they have certain hurdles in place on purpose to keep certain alumni away from the athletes, especially because of the influence and other things like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, it's I think it's important to tap into alumni, whether it's from the athlete side or even the non-athlete side as well. I mean, I always encourage, and we talk about, is just people want to help, and with the struggles that some of these athletes encounter, again, whether it's they're still playing now or they're done playing, is if they tap into that alumni group, people, whether it's, former players or again, any kind of former alumni, but they should definitely do. We definitely recommend doing that. And I know I've talked to some people, like I talked to an agent where her player wanted to go back to the school, and it's like they almost shunned it, which is incredible, because I think you need to tap into that. In fact, it was funny. I was on a call myself with my alumni, and one of the former players from the program, one top-notch Hall of Fame player, just said, "Listen, I'm here. I was a Hall of Fame player from the school. I played in the NFL for 10 years. Tap into me. I want to help." So I think hopefully we'll start seeing more of the schools reaching out, or the athletes reaching out, and just kind of coming together as a team.
Well, I mean, to your point, I think the challenges it's a control dynamic and liability, right? You don't know. There would have to be not just a vetting process, but there had to be some control measurements to put in place and variables that they have to be concerned about, because, again, the pipelining and the dynamics of influencing these young men to make certain decisions that may or may not be in their favor by way of now next level decisions. And, which teams are they going to pursue and which teams are pursuing them. So I think that's where their concerns come in versus a more holistic approach with certain individuals that aren't even at all, like myself, for example, interested in influencing where a kid stays at one particular school, goes into the portal, goes to another school, or even talk about going to the NFL and which teams, right? So I'm more worried about this young man's mental health. I'm more worried about, what does the future look like after the NFL? Not what they do in between right now. That you guys have that already going on, been doing it for generations at this point. It's more like, how do we add value to this process on behalf of the young person, right? That's the key. That's, at the end of the day, anything and everything that attaches itself to my name or attach myself to, that has to be at the core of it all. How are we supporting in a positive, holistic way these young men and young women, young people in general into the future? Because we're not doing that proactively, intentionally, the future doesn't look that bright.
Yeah, no, I agree. Absolutely. So let's talk about networking, connecting, and talk about the importance of that in just our daily lives, and then also while you're still active playing.
I mean, yeah. So the importance of networking, and what I've learned even over the last couple of years that it's really helped accelerate me is not to randomly network, right? If we are trying to build true integrous relationships, then being able to have a conversation human to human, right, person to person, and really ask concerted questions, that's where I've found that a lot of our successes come from, where these interactions like this right here, right, we're getting to know each other. It's not just, pitching, closing, selling them on some idea. We're all pitched out at this point. We're so tired and exhausted from the pitch deck and these are people at the highest levels of business that are just tired. If I don't get along with you, if this doesn't align with, my mission, vision, and purpose in the world, then we don't need to be having a conversation. And in doing so, we have to know our audience. We have to know who we're talking to a little bit better, do our homework and so forth. So, I mean, the importance of networking is there, taking even a slight step above the importance of building rapport. Like true integrity-based rapport is key to everything, right? Where, they say you can't choose your family, right? You can't choose your family, their blood, but there is such thing called chosen family. And if I choose to do life with you, it's like, I have my business practice, I need to align. I was like, this is feeding my family, right? So you almost have to feel like family to me, where I really feel like you have my good, what's the word? Forgive me. Intentions. Like you have good intentions towards my life. Right.
Yeah, and I think that the key that you said there too is relationships. And you're right. I mean, you don't want to take that shotgun approach. I mean, you want to be intentional about who you're networking with. And we always talk about too, profession, you need to take that, kind of have that giving, helping mentality. Cause I think it's just, it's not about necessarily what's in it for you, but how can you help somebody else? Because I think, what's in it. I was talking to somebody earlier on another podcast, and we discussed that. Just the more you give, the more will come back, and I think that's important. And then, yeah, absolutely. And then I guess the other thing too is, as a player, talk about the importance of networking while you're still playing.
Oh wow! I mean, and it's funny because to the point, the phrase I was going to use is to have your best interest at heart, right?
Yeah.
That you can truly feel and trust that this person has your best interest at heart. So starting from being a player, I mean, there's no better time than now. Like, it's not for us to wait until I get there. I have a voice now and an opportunity to build that kind of rapport at this level, so that the rapport gets built over time. So there's no better time than the present. Why am I waiting until after the fact to start? Right? If I have the ability to spend that time with an individual and allow that rapport to be built, then the time is now. So absolutely encourage. And I will say this to your point. I've spoken to a lot of the guys who are in the NFL now, and the common denominator that came out was, we spend so much, here's the word again, time on and off the field, either in the classroom, training, preparing for games, etc., we're not necessarily doing internships. We're not necessarily doing,
Yeah.
job readiness at that moment. We're going to class, we're going to field, we're going to class. There's only 24 hours in a day, and we need to get rest. So the dynamics of that is by the time college football or the athletics end, you really don't have any work experience.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
You've been working on the field this whole time.
Yeah, and then I guess to that point, there's a lot of the non-athletes that do get the opportunities to do the internships and all that, and so like they're almost a step ahead. You kind of hear the stories of like these guys that are done or females that are done, and they're like their friends that didn't make it. They're like way ahead of them at this point because they had all those other opportunities to do that. So I always like to talk about a little controversial topic, but I like to talk about NIL, name, image, and likeness. And I know it's something that's current day versus when you play, but give me your thoughts, both positive and negative.
I mean, and that's a great question because, not deep diving into it, not having a level of expertise, but being as familiar as a lot of the general public would be, like, oh, this thing exists,
Right.
This is something. You have the one hand where, as former athletes say, well, it's about time, right? There's a lot of money being made on our time and our effort, so we should be getting a cut of it, a piece of it, and so forth. Absolutely. Using our image, using our likeness, our IP, right? Our intellectual property in that respect.
Right.
So, yeah, there should be a compensation, if you will, while at the same time, so that's the positive side. On the negative side is you have a lot of these young men who are coming into wealth so quickly without having any real financial literacy, right? It's like, okay, I'm getting money. Great. I'm going to go buy a car. You don't know about investment portfolios and diversity. You don't know where to put your money, right? You're just so excited that you have it, right? And especially with the general public is perceiving as wealth and as money, right? We're not recognizing, well, there's this thing, we don't say there's only two things that's consistent or that's a guarantee in life is death and taxes, right? So we have this thing that we have to account for, where as soon as you get past a certain tax bracket, it ain't 15%, it's 30-something, it's 40-something, and so forth. And so that's the part of it that we have to be mindful of. And this is information you don't know, right? Maybe happenstance or hearsay. So being able to have that intelligence, you're almost setting kids up for failure because, all right, now we're compensating them. Now they have these opportunities to go in and out of portals and to really take hold of their careers. Well, at the same time, I am completely ignorant as to how to really leverage this for my gain long term. Again, over time.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree, and I think that is one of the biggest drawbacks. You're right. Is the lack of education. I mean, there needs to be more education, and I actually have another podcast called NIL for You, the number 4, the letter U, and we talk about it's all about educating people. My co-host has a business where they work with high school athletes and their families to teach them to, like what you're saying is, you need to form an LLC or you need to do these different things from a financial literacy. You're going to have to pay taxes. I heard one story where this athlete, he got something like a $40,000 NIL deal, and he, spent all the money with his friends. And I get that. I mean, it's not just athletes, young people. However, because that happened, it took his family's income threshold above the level where he lost his full scholarship, and that should never happen. So, I mean, I think it's bad. I mean, there needs to be some education around that for sure.
Yeah. No, so, and it's funny, the word education, if I may, word education, there has to be a distinction. And as you shared with my background and coming out of University of Miami, dabbling a little bit here and there, trying to figure out where I was going to be able to maximize my time and get the greatest return on my time and investment. Did real estate, did mortgages, and then end up starting my own tutoring business. And along the way, Epic comes up eventually, but along the way, we started to really be exposed to what is and what is not in both a classroom environment and a household environment. And I say classroom to allude to the schooling aspect of it. We are all programmed, right, as American citizens, that is an education system, right? This is our education system where, based on United Mentors, the tutoring space that I come out of, which is all supplemental education, right? Supplemental education. The distinction between schooling and education, there's a very distinction, there's a micro distinction really that we are not thinking or educated on, that there's a difference, right? Rob, your education did not start at school, right? It started at home.
Right.
You
Yeah.
didn't utter your first words or read your first book at school at 5, 6 years old, right? It was at home. And I already know, even in this podcast, the education, the platform that you're providing others, is your education didn't stop when school ended either, college or otherwise.
Right.
So it's technically a school system because our
Right.
education doesn't start and end with school, and that's the programming because of deletion, distortion, dilution. Like we've got programming, and there's a lot of distortion around what we should and should not know. Because hey, if I send my kid to school, I'm a good parent. I'm doing the right thing. I'm
Right.
not going to jail, truant law, right? But it's not enough. Hashtag school, and this is something that we've been using for the publicity part of it to help the community educate them and say, guys, school's not enough. Great. That is a start to make sure your kids are going to school. You didn't have a choice. It's mandated by the government. With that said, you must supplement, right? And we're not just talking about tutoring. We're not just talking about math, science, English, reading, things of that nature. We're talking about financial literacy. We're talking about taxes. We're talking about economy. There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting in school anymore based on the transitions of the model, the evolving education system, the evolving school system. But this is exactly why we have the perfect platform to help supplement and educate families on what they can do to ensure, right? Almost guarantee their kids are going to receive the full scope of what they need to be successful in life.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. So let's talk about this is a new wrinkle in my podcast that I put in the kind of fun questions. And so give advice to freshman AJ. What advice would you give?
The first thing you may want to reevaluate doing a double engineering degree while playing Division I football. That's number one. Especially in hindsight, if I knew mentorship, if I knew then what I knew now, right?
Yeah.
If I knew then what I know now, definitely would not have done that, right? Would have advised against it. Again, I could have done whatever you want to do, son, but at the end of the day, the 168 credits trying to balance them full-time athletics and the demand of it was never going to work. It was just going to cripple both experiences because you're doing too much, right? Get one major, stick to it, don't double it up, especially because of the financial woes that are attached to it and understanding the system. Because even after football ends, you still got to finish the degree that you set out 3-4 years ago. And it's going to take you an extra year and a half, 2 years, which means $60,000 worth of debt. Do you think it's worth it now?
Good advice there. Now let's fast forward. Give advice to senior AJ.
Wow, senior AJ. To give advice to myself, that's a good one. I would say what's going on right now in my life is, stop hiding. Right? You have a voice, you have a wealth of experience to pay forward, right? And it's opportunities like podcasts like this where you can speak up and speak towards supporting young people versus just kind of hiding behind other identities and organizations. Like you said earlier, you need to incorporate an LLC. Yes, but that's about taxes. You don't have to be behind, Alumni Direct. This is Rob, right? Rob has a voice. Rob has a lot of value to share with the community. Oh, and then this is my organization over here that we do these particular services. And you can have multiple services. Diversify your income, diversify your portfolio by way of not hiding beneath the corporate veil, but actually rising above it and having this platform help the world.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's funny because I'll ask the question like, okay, let me think back about that one. So let's talk about, you played football and sports and everything, growing up throughout and just all the way through college. Talk a little bit about your transition out of sport, and then maybe give some keywords of advice to other athletes.
I appreciate you asking that because it was a tough transition. It was a very, very hard decision because of the decisions made prior. Obviously, like I said, doing a double engineering major with an academic scholarship. So I came in with the 4.0, the 1400 SAT score. So getting an academic scholarship and venturing into a double major. Then also spending a lot of time playing football, which one took away from the other, where I was a cross product. Sometimes engineering took me away from football, and football certainly took me away from engineering. So, first and foremost, having to make a decision about, leaving the football team was rough. I mean, that was probably one of the pinnacle moments of my life. Literally, it was life changing, and realizing it was absolutely necessary, and probably should have happened sooner, right? Maybe probably should have happened sooner. But in hindsight, having to make that transition and then find myself out in the community, right? No work experience, right? A good math acumen, so on. The mentorship dynamic was key, right? So without mentors, bro, I don't know where I'd be right now. Absolutely not. So I sat in front of wise men and women, and I just asked questions, and I just consumed as much of this wisdom and experience as possible, just like Epic. Experience professionals impacting community, right? The reason I named that, because that EP, that was critical for me to even get to where I am today, right? There was no way I was going to go and get another degree. Let me go get the MBA. Let me get all these other things. There's experience. Like that's what
Right.
America was built on. That's what the school system was built on back when education in America actually created tradesmanship in the towns, the villages, and things of that nature. So mentorship was everything. And thankfully, laying out a plan, right, and having a mentor walk me through it really helped kind of pick up things, got incorporated, started my first corporation, made good money, eventually rebranded, took a $20,000 line of credit, turned into $1 million generating revenue source, right? And, the rest is history, brother.
Yeah, that's great. That's again what we want to do with the athletes. There's a lot of struggles. Some people are fortunate they have a game plan ahead of time. They've got their plan B. They're looking at stuff, but you just hear a lot of these stories where they're not. So to hear the story where you're kind of looking at it, and that's what we're encouraging athletes to do, is just at some point, it's not just AJ the football player, but it's AJ the person. You got many years ahead of you, and definitely, you want to utilize it. So you went through some different, we talked about real estate and mortgage and tapping into some other areas, but ultimately the tutoring that led to education, all that. Talk about Epic, and talk about what you're doing today, how you're helping people, and then we'll follow up with the foundation component of it.
Yeah, dude, that's amazing. So from college, starting my first business, my LLC, right? A limited liability corporation. For those who don't know what LLC stands for, a lot of times because we forget that people don't know, right?
Yeah.
So if I can give that to you, it's just another corporate status. There's C corps, S corps, all these things. So learning that at 24 years old and trying to learn as I went, right? Almost that fake it to make it fallacy. Learning as I go, and taking the losses and the L's and turning them into lessons, and next year. Along the way of that growth, that trajectory that I talked about, that 500x over 5-6 years, I realized something. Our reputation organically started to grow independent of marketing, right? We didn't know marketing, right? It was all grassroots. It was people talking to people about the success we were having with their kids. We were guaranteeing 1 letter grade, but most kids were doing 2 or 3 letter grade increases. We were taking the worst scenarios, brother. I'm talking about 9th graders who were reading at a 2nd grade level, who were doing math at a 3rd grade level. By the time we went through a summer program, they were at an 11th grade level. That's the type of results we were getting with my for-profit United Mentors. And because of that impact, the reputation got out into the community, because these were private schools and so forth, so on, but it started to touch the charter schools, started to touch the public schools. What does that mean? Well, the misconception is that if you go to a private school, you're wealthy, right? You've got money. You come from moderate to high income homes. That couldn't be farther from the truth. There's a lot of private schools that take certain scholarships to allow, low to moderate income families come into their institutions. Obviously, you also have the public schools, right? Predominantly, a lot of the low to moderate income homes are there. So now we have families calling who are in desperate need of support, our specific support, and could not afford it. No matter what the nominal fees were, no matter how below the market value we were undercutting, it didn't matter. Like, it just adds up. You could be paying $50 an hour or less. If you have to do 20 hours a month of tutoring because your kid is 3 levels behind, that adds up really quickly. You know what I mean?
Right.
So at one point, we were moved to start a foundation in order to facilitate scholarships. That's how this whole thing got started. And scholarships went on for 5, 6, 7 years. Boom, COVID happened, right? And at that point, what happened was the for-profit United Mentors, Epic being a subsidiary, the nonprofit leg, shifted, where Epic took off, right? And we still have United Mentors over here doing tutoring, facilitating tutoring, services. But the foundation really took off because then we could also factor in a lot of different funding opportunities to help accelerate not just scholarships, but the mentorship. Because this is what it is. Information paid forward, right? From one generation to the next, if I knew then what I know now. So that mentorship dynamic caused a lot of operations. And then last year, 2022, which I can't believe 2023 is almost over, but last year in 2022, we launched a Career Pathways program, which means experienced professionals impacting communities is perfectly positioned to support any child from any community, any of their socioeconomical situations, from cradle all the way to career. Cradle to career is why Epic exists, because it allows us to facilitate what we call ecosystem mergers. It brings both for-profit and nonprofit together and allows us to make sure that no matter what a child's socioeconomical situation is, they're supported.
That's great. I mean, it's so important. My wife's a teacher, and she got out of the system last year, but has a business, tutoring and working with reading comprehension, all that with kids with learning disabilities. It makes such an impact. I mean, some of the amazing things. Sounds like you're doing great things with that. So, how do people find you?
Oh, great question. I mean, it's 2023 going into 2024, so everything's on social media. You're watching this right now on social media.
Absolutely.
So, we tell everybody, check out our Instagram, direct message us. We've got people who are always watching the social media. So at Epic South Florida on Instagram. At Epic South Florida on Instagram. If you're on Facebook, you just shorten it. Epic SFL. That is for now. We are looking at an international movement right now, so we're going to be doing some upgrades, but you'll always be able to find us through our social media. And for United Mentors, if there's any supplemental education, SAT prep, languages, math, science, physics, anything that you need on an academic side, and you can look for at United Mentors. So it's all the way out at United Mentors on both Instagram and Facebook. And this is what we're really looking to accelerate is the social proofing as well as the visibility really for our organizations moving into 2024.
And then all that, I'm assuming you could do it like anywhere in the U.S. or you said ultimately worldwide. It's just something because it can be remote, which is great.
Yep. If you're on the internet, we can get to you.
Yeah, that's it. It's funny you're saying it's definitely old school, like just putting it out there like that. But we'll put it in the show notes, and definitely encourage. It sounds like you're doing some amazing things with Epic, and encourage people to reach out. And you can find us on alumnidirect.com. You could find us on Instagram and X, and the show is on our Alumni Direct YouTube channel as well as across all the podcast networks. And really encourage people to watch and listen to these podcasts. We have so many great former athletes like AJ, and just the impact that they're having on the community today is awesome. And to be able to help, like I said, the challenges that a lot of these athletes are having, it's not just athletes, it's a lot of people, but just, focusing on the athlete side of things, with the mental health and financial literacy, if we can make an impact on just even one athlete, obviously you want to make a lot more than that, but definitely listen to it. AJ, it's been great. We really appreciate all the time today.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it very much. And there is a hashtag trademark it more in 24, much more in 24. We're excited about launching our consulting. If you think about the Salvation Army, Rob, I don't know how many checks you've written the Salvation Army for, but we've all given our clothes, right? And You see the stores that they have that generate revenue. So that is where the modeling and the education comes in as to well, did you know the NFL was a 501c6? Right? These are dynamics of nonprofit organizations that generate a lot of revenue, right? A lot of money gets distributed and generated, and that's where we're stepping into that frame because we can't impact these social initiatives. We cannot make a dynamic impact on these social initiatives without capital.
Right.
This is America, right? And as much as we have people, good-hearted, incredible souls that are giving their dollars and their time and their contributions, at the end of the day, what Epic has now fleshed out is a way for them to see a return on their investment. who's better to help make more money than the people who are already giving of their resources to the community? Those are the organizations we want to tap into, work with, and help accelerate. Because if you're doing that already, you're going to do more when you make more.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's great. And thanks again. It's been great. We look forward to seeing everybody on our next show. Take care.